Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 337. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, what's up, people?
This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together and we talk about DC books we read. Coming up on this week's show, we have Detective Comics 1067, Action Comics 1050, DC vs. Vampires issue 12, Blue Beetle Graduation Day issue 2, and The Nice House in the Lake issue 12. Plus, I've got a Patreon book. I'll be looking at American Vampire issue 28. Issue 28, you said, didn't you?
And I got, I was gonna say, I also have Sergeant Rock.
Oh, so odd even. Yeah, okay, I'll add that in. But issue 28, you hear me say, did you not do that already? No, funny thing. So the last 5 issues I did were actually the second miniseries.
Yeah.
Not 5 issues of the main book. So I'm actually back to issue 28 now. So retroactively renumber those last 5 in your head.
So that's why I thought something was off, because it sounded like you were describing Lord of Nightmares, but it had been so long since I had read it, I wasn't going to make that gamble and just go, I think you're wrong, but I don't know. That's why it didn't seem so familiar for 28 and 29, because I thought there was the Dark Passenger stuff, but yeah.
I just assumed it was at the back of the trade, because I'm reading the trade, and the covers in the trade don't have the titles or the numbers. Nope. It's just the covers on their own.
Yep.
So I just assumed it was at the end of the book, like the last mini was from the third trade. But it's not, because I was double checking it, thinking, oh, let me just double check what I'm on, and I actually looked it up on the Comic Geeks, and I was like, oh wait, shit, this is issue 28. I thought I'd done that already. What have I done? Oh, that's what I've done. So and the grand scheme of things doesn't really matter that much, but no, that's why the numbering's
I mean, you're still doing a Patreon book at the end of the day, so, and it's different than the one that you've already done.
Oh, so, yeah. Like you know, either way, they were both going into the slot anyway. They just I was just incorrectly naming them as we were going. So yes, that's what's coming up. Before we get into it, just a couple of quick updates on the schedule for the next couple of weeks, just so you know what to expect, when and where. So this is going out at the normal time. You actually got last week's episode slightly early. We just put it out on Christmas Eve. Next week is going to be the opposite. It's going to be a little bit late, due to some scheduling shenanigans. Next week would be a week where Matt would just take the week off, and it'd be Connor instead in the normal time. But Connor's actually going on vacation, so we are recording a day late. Therefore, it'll be up sometime. It won't be up early for Patreon. It'll just be up sometime on Sunday, whenever it's ready and out the oven. And it'll probably be quite a short episode, because there's only 4 comics coming out next week that we're going to talk about. But we're not going to feel too bad about it being a short episode, because the annual episode, which, you know, our end of year discussion where we do all of the different, you know, best of the year stuff, we're going to be doing that during the following week. So after you get a short episode next week, might only be an hour long, something like that. But then you'll get the annual episode during the week following, before the next regular episode. So that's what's coming up in the next week and a half, give or take. So just, you know, be prepared, be aware of what's coming, and things are going to be a little bit late next week for the regular episode. But then you get an extra one during the week. So that's what's happening. All right. Very good. That's all out the way.
And we're good.
Yes. So welcome to the show, everyone. It's been, you know, Christmas season. How was your Christmas, Matt? I suppose you should start with that.
Yeah, no, everything was pretty good, except on Christmas Eve I got food poisoning. So that, or on Christmas night. Oh, no. Christmas Eve was great. Christmas night, yeah. So I'm still recovering from that. I haven't been able to eat like I used to. So
Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve was a little too good, you might say.
You know, yeah. So, but yeah, no, Christmas. We had to go over. My in-laws had gone out of town, my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, to go see a football game in Arizona. So we had to go watch the dogs. And I thought, like, oh, maybe having playing with the dogs after on a full stomach would make me feel not so good. And then I did not have a good 2 days following. So yeah.
Yeah. I have eaten far too much chocolate in the last week.
No such thing.
Well, you know, but from a health perspective, yes.
Yeah, I don't, because I know you got me on the Terry's chocolate oranges, right?
Oh yes.
We have them here. Do you guys have the Pop Rocks version?
Oh yes. We have there's the Pop Rock version. There's the honeycomb version.
We don't have that one yet, but I've seen it online.
Yeah. And I've never had them, but I'm sure there's like a white and a dark chocolate version as well.
Yeah. Not a fan of the dark chocolate. The dark chocolate and the orange don't mesh as well as the milk chocolate and the orange. But yeah, well, my local grocery store had the popping candy version, and let me tell you, that is a delight.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't make sense why it works so well.
It's chocolate orange, but when you're sucking on it, every so often it starts to pop a bit.
Yep.
It's delightful.
Yep. So, but yeah, I got one of those in my stocking, So, yeah, quite good. Made my brother try it, and he's like, "Oh, I don't like chocolate." Turns out he doesn't like American chocolate because he goes, "Wait, where's this from?" I was like, "It's English chocolate," and according to my friends over there, their chocolate's superior because of what goes in it.
Well, Tara was telling me that Hershey's chocolate is literally made with like off milk. That's like how they make it.
Yeah, it's powdered milk.
Yeah, no wonder it sucks so much.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, the and even our Cadbury, which is sold by Hershey's, isn't as good as yours because I've had actual Cadbury chocolate from like a specialty shop, and they are better. So yeah, turns out my brother just doesn't like American chocolate or Hershey's chocolate. So
yeah, like American candy does have its bright spots, but plain chocolate is not one of them. No. When it comes to just the actual chocolate, it's
for sure.
You're better.
Well, those honeycomb ones I got hooked on when we were in Ventura because I bought a couple of different ones and I can't find them anywhere else. So those are the ones I got to get back on because it's like a Butterfinger, but not. Like it has the same consistency but different flavor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and this is not just like the UK superior. This is like all of Europe and like even like maybe Canada. I assume might have the better chocolate. Like this might literally be everywhere except the US has better chocolate.
So,
but I say that without any research, so don't quote me on it.
No. What's your one that you like from here? It's Butterfinger, and then there's another.
I like Butterfingers. I like I guess Reese's stuff, but I mean we have that here now. I don't know, like Pop-Tarts, I guess?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but I remember there was one that you'd have to go to a specialty shop and get. It was Butterfinger and something else. No, it wasn't Pop-Tarts because Pop-Tarts was the other one.
Twinkie, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know. I meant to send you this picture back when you came back from the States, but you were talking about the Oreo Cakesters, and that week my grocery store had an entire display of just they had gotten their shipment in, so. I meant to send you that, but just a wall of them.
Yeah, I got myself a box when I was
Pete would be in heaven.
They're a bit sick of it after you have like too many of them, but like it was a rare delicacy because I don't usually get to see them. So it is what it is. I just spent far too much money on end of year video game sales as tradition. That's my Christmas pretty much. But yes, hope everyone had a nice Christmas season, regardless of how much or what you celebrate. And obviously we're recording this on New Year's Eve. Yeah. So just for
most overrated of all the holidays.
I don't really care about New Year's, to be honest.
We're turning the calendar. Literally, we don't do this for any other month. Like y'all chill.
But the big number changes though, Matt. That's the exciting part.
Yeah, but still, like I don't care.
Do you know what it is, Matt? It's an excuse for a lot of people to get blind drunk, and because neither of us drink, neither of us see the appeal in New Year's. It's just a thing.
And it's funny because I have a friend that has a birthday on this day, and every year I have to tell him that I have to, he'll ask to come over for a party, but I don't like to go anywhere on New Year's. Just I don't want to risk it. There's too many stupid people out. Don't want to go risk getting into an altercation. So, but I have to work overtime tomorrow and I have to be up early. So it tends to work out for me to be in bed early this year.
Sure.
I have an actual reason besides, But yeah. I watch. We get enough fireworks on 4th of July. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, we don't have 4th of July, but we have Bonfire Night, which is November 5th, in case anyone's unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, I've seen V for Vendetta.
Also, Guy Fawkes Night. There's many names, but yes. Yes. All right. So, don't worry, Matt. That doesn't matter.
I know.
It doesn't matter that we're almost at the end of the year. It doesn't matter that we're mere hours from 2023. There's still time for a Comicsology top 10.
Yes, I know. I'm not going to fight it this week because I want to get on the road. So, let's. Let's get on with the guesses.
You've realized that the protesting only prolongs the pain.
And sometimes it's funny for a bit, but when I have stuff to do after this, the bit's not funny to me. It ceases to be amusing.
Well, as per usual now, ComiXology split the charts on the days of release. So we're looking at Tuesday first as of what's selling the best as of right now in ComiXology, but it's looking at just the Tuesday releases, which basically means just the DC Comics. So what do you think the highest selling DC comic on ComiXology is for Tuesday?
I'm going to go with Action Comics 1050.
It is Action Comics. Yeah. That was a reasonable guess.
It was on a lot of Twitter this week, and so I'm guessing that, just pure curiosity making people check it out.
I mean,
it's a nice round number.
It's been marketed as a milestone issue. It's it's a little bit bigger. It's meant to be a jumping on point for all the books that are coming out of the Superman line getting into the next year. It makes sense that it's done a little bit better than normal, if not a lot better than normal. I mean, who knows what the actual figures are. But Action Comics is number 1 as of right now in ComiXology. Number 2 is DC versus Vampires issue 12, so the final issue of that actually doing quite well. Then we have Batman Beyond the White Knight, which still sells quite well. The one that does surprise me is the $10 book, which is the Tales from Earth 6, a celebration of Stan Lee. So I guess that having a bit of special novelty to it, the trick for it.
I know Tim picked that up physically because it was in his haul picture that he puts up weekly. So if Timmy's going out of his way to grab it, other people must have been too.
Yes, which comes a couple of hours after the "I'm driving to the comic shop" tick tweet that he puts out every single week.
I love it because it is clockwork. It's when I know, So
yes. Number 5 is Detective Comics. Unsurprisingly, if anything, it's surprising it's only at number 5. But there's a couple of novelty big issues out, so I guess that's why it's down a little bit. Then we have another big book from DC this week is the Wonder Woman Historia book that came out, which I know Connor loved this, the first one or two of these. And then number 6 is John Stewart, the Emerald Knight issue 1. This is them tying up some of the loose ends of that last Green Lantern run that kind of just dwindled and died. Number 8 is Nice House in the Lake issue 12, final issue of that. We'll be talking about that later. Number 9 is the Riddler Year 1. And then number 10 is Tim Drake Robin issue 4. So Blue Beetle Graduation Day just missing out in the top 10. That's at number 11.
Yeah. I mean, it is a small mini for a,
I mean, it could be
tier character.
It could be worse though. The Sergeant Rock book is number 14, which may not sound that bad, but it's underneath one of the trades. Nightwing Volume 2 is actually sold more than that single issue has.
Yeah.
So
I'm willing to bet people are gonna buy up that trade once it's out.
Oh, very possibly.
They're probably waiting for it. So,
but it's usually not a good sign if your single issue is selling less than one of the trades. Don't get me wrong. Congratulations to Nightwing Volume 2 for being a reasonable seller. But it's interesting. That said, though, DC Mech issue 6 is on a different row entirely. So, and so it's Harley Quinn. That main Harley Quinn book doesn't sell that well.
Is free falling.
At least not digitally, anyway. Maybe it does well in physical because people buy up the variants, but digitally it doesn't. Feel like
and I don't hear anybody talk about it either online. And there's hardly when it was a Connor Palmiotti book, constantly I would hear people praising it, but now not too much. So
I mean, at least
Harley's cooled.
I mean, DC Mech and Gotham Knights Gilded City, like that being around there, like, okay, I understand that because that's like, these kind of like tie-in books or weird like Elseworld books that aren't like super high profile. Next trade there, Batman the Tower came out, the Shadows of the Bat stuff.
Ooh.
So that was the next best-selling trade after the rest of the single issues.
Wonderful.
So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, all right, let's look at Wednesday then. Let's look at the rest of the industry. What do you think the number 1 selling book was?
This one's kind of tough because I'm looking. I don't see too many X books at the top here on League of Comic Geeks. So I'm just gonna do a quick scroll. Yeah, I don't see too many. So I'm gonna go to my next best guess. Although there's a dark web, both are dark web tie-ins. I'm gonna go with Amazing Spider-Man 16.
Nope.
Yeah. Dang.
I don't think you'll get this. I think you'll be.
No?
I think you'll be sidelined or sideswiped. Sideswiped. That's the phrase I'm looking for.
Let's go Midnight Suns.
No.
Dang. Okay.
But where is that even in the top 10? I don't even see that.
No, because you said Sideswipe, so that was the next best thing I could think of. That was
yeah, Midnight Suns is like number 19. That's like way down there.
Yeah, no, okay.
No, number 1 is Timeless issue 1, which is the new Kang the Conqueror. Like,
oh dang it! There it is.
Yeah.
I should have known. It's like an event type deal.
Which obviously they're doing because he's about to be big in the movies and stuff. So that makes a fair amount of sense. Number 2 is Dark Web X-Men issue 2. Number 3 is Amazing Spider-Man. So that's the Dark Web Amazing Spider-Man. Is there a difference? I think there is.
I don't know.
No, it's issue 16. It's still the same.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
it's just a Dark Web tie-in.
It's because sometimes, like, maybe they've stopped doing it, but Marvel were doing for a while. They were doing, like, they do, like, issue 5 point and then the name of the event, and it would be, like, an extra issue of the book that wasn't one of the regular numbered issues, but it was sort of numbered alongside. It was, I don't know, it was a weird thing they were doing for a while. Rather than just doing, like, a one-shot, they were trying to still sort of tie it to the main book.
The 0.5, yeah. It was weird.
Number 4 is Exterminators issue 4. Number 5 is Miracle Man by Gaiman and Buckingham, The Silver Age issue 3. I remember issue 2 popping up a while ago with that, so that's still doing well. Venom issue 14 is number 6. Number 7 is New Mutants issue 33. Hey, Marvel book getting to a 33 is notable in this stage.
Yeah, big time.
Like the only ones I can think of that are up to a reasonably high number are Avengers. I think Wolverine's doing a decent number. I want to say Miles Morales is doing okay number-wise, but there's not a lot of them. Number 8 is She-Hulk issue 9. And then number 9 is Star Wars The High Republic, The Blade, I think that says. And then number 10 is Moon Knight issue 18. So, yeah, all 10 of the slots on this Wednesday were Marvel. They actually released a lot of books in this Christmas New Year's week. In fact, most of the next 5 are all Marvel. The only one that isn't is Book of Slaughter by James Tynion. Ooh.
Which isn't that part of the Something Selling the Children?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's doing okay. But yeah, mostly Marvel. Not a lot of indie stuff kind of like penetrating that top 10. There's another Turtles and Power Rangers crossover comic.
Hey.
Yeah. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 issue 1. It's a really clunky title.
Yeah, that's a lot of letters.
It's a lot of words.
TMNT, MMPR.
Yeah, you even just doing an acronym's too many.
That's what I mean. It's a lot of letters.
It's too many.
Funnily enough, we were watching Secret of the Ooze last night right before bed.
Naturally.
Yes. Well, because my wife had never heard Ninja Rap. She had forgot about that. And I was like, well, we're watching Ninja Turtles. And then she conked out early. So I was like, all right, we'll finish this later. But I don't know. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle, Pete? I don't think I know this.
Raphael.
Of course. It's funny. You hate Guy Gardner, but you love the Guy Gardner of the Ninja Turtles. Weird.
No. He's not the Guy Gardner. No,
yes, he is.
No.
Yes, he is.
No, he's the Batman. Leonardo is the Superman. Raphael's the Batman. That is.
Who's Donnie then?
I don't know. Barry Allen, I guess.
Oh, well, I love the Flash, so that's fine.
And Michelangelo's like
Ambush Bug. You didn't take him serious at all.
Kate Man, Green Arrow. I don't know.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. I figured you would have been like a Leonardo guy, maybe Donatello.
I think Leo's my second favorite, but Raphael is. He basically all the good plot comes from him. Him like having conflicts with the others is what creates the story.
Yeah, he's the layered one. He actually gets arcs in the movies. You know, everyone else is kind of set dressing. But Raph kind of, because even in the third one, right, he's the one that has like the relationship with the kid. That, you know, they bond.
Oh, it's been a long time since I watched that third one. I haven't seen the
third one in a while. That was another thing. My wife goes, "There's a third one." I said, "Yeah, you probably didn't watch it as a kid. You're probably out of Turtles."
I'm going to be seeing it again soon though, because we're doing them all on collector's cut. So.
Oh, fun. Yeah, actually, our first movie we saw together in the theater was the animated TMNT. that had Sarah Michelle Gellar
yeah,
as,
from 2007. Yeah.
Yep, it had April O'Neil, and funnily enough, her Hollywood boyfriend / husband Chris Evans as Casey Jones.
That's
so
that's quite funny that
yep.
he's went from being a voice in the animated Turtles movie to
one
what
of
he
the
is
biggest
now.
stars. Yeah. So
Actually, speaking of Matt, do you know what you never do?
What?
You do not bet against James Cameron.
True, you do not.
Right? It's a shame Connor's not here because I'd rub this in his face right now. I had a conversation with Connor earlier this year about how well Avatar 2 was going to do.
Yeah?
And I honestly think it was going to do as well as the first one, and it still might not do quite as well as the first one.
No.
But, Connor reluctantly said it might make $1 billion. It might make $1 billion. It's already it made $1 billion in 12 days, and it's going to easily pass the previous highest grossing movie of the year, which was Top Gun Maverick, which is just under 1.5 billion. And it's going to do that in like a matter of days, and it's still got like all of January to itself basically, because the next blockbuster, I guess, is Ant-Man 2 in February. Like, it's pretty much just.
I mean, and January's always dead anyway, so I always felt like that's where Avatar made a lot of its money, was in that January. That it came out,
but the legs are insane. It's made more every day this week than it did last week, at least domestically in the US.
Well, it's one of those things where people are like, "Oh, I forgot Avatar was a thing," then they go see it, and like again, all the guys that I played football with, I'm the only person that hasn't seen it.
It's getting a lot of repeat business. It's like the drop off. In fact, this weekend, if the estimates hold, it's actually going to increase its weekend from last weekend, which almost never happens.
No, but it helps that Christmas was on, the weekend. I'm sure that if it wasn't Christmas last weekend, it would have had a bigger weekend.
Oh, very possibly, There's obviously a number of factors. And the weird thing is that China is actually a big moneymaker for Avatar, and it's actually quite neutered right now because they're having a lot of lockdowns because they're having more COVID outbreaks and whatnot.
Right.
And obviously it's not released in Russia right now for obvious reasons. And that made like 100 million last time the movie came out.
I mostly tease Pete on when it comes to Avatar and James Cameron, but again, it's real recognizes real, right? The movie's making money. I haven't had anybody say the worst thing that I've heard is people go, yeah, it's okay, but holy crap, the visuals are amazing. That's kind of Avatar in a nutshell.
They are. I mean, I actually think there's good characters in the second one, and I think the story hits a lot more emotionally in places. I think you will get something out of it as someone who usually would enjoy a relationship with a character and an animal. I think you will enjoy parts of it, but like the thing with the visuals is that Avatar was so ahead of the game in 2009 when it came out with its visuals, and honestly, Hollywood's been kind of slacking. Like, most of the big movies don't really push for effects.
No, it's cheap. Like, again, like, so even Black Panther 2, Black Panther 2, which had all of the, Talokan scenes, they looked okay, but it was like, that's weird y'all are putting out your water movie right before Avatar comes out, where you know that James Cameron is obsessed with the water. Like, the man has literally been to the Titanic 14 times.
And then so Avatar 2 pushes it even further, and it is like nothing you've ever seen. Like the fidelity and the visuals is insane. So there is something to be said that people are going for the spectacle and going because it is something that's worth seeing on a big IMAX screen or whatever.
Yeah, again, I haven't heard one bad word about it. Like outside people complain about the runtime, which they're gonna do on long movies anyways. But like the worst thing I've seen is our friend Dan being like, yeah, it was okay. When your movie is just okay, that's still a big compliment. So, but I just like to tease Pete because it's fun. Like now I've already seen news about how Cameron wants to introduce Fire Navi.
Yeah, that's the plan for the third one.
Now my joke is like, the third one's not coming out.
I mean, you say that, but they've already shot.
Yeah, I know.
There's actually going to be a relatively quick turnaround for the next one, just because it's already been made.
So, now it's that cycle of, Avatar's out, okay, it's gonna be a while, but we'll see.
I just it's shocking to me, and for like 13 years, people have said, no one remembers or cares about Avatar. It's not that big a deal, right? It comes out and it's easily beating like the only movie it will probably not beat financially is Endgame. Every other Marvel movie that's come out, it is beating the shit out of.
Well, I think and
ease.
people are kind of burned out on Marvel at this point, and they're getting it everywhere, right? The only place to get Avatar is at the movie theater. It's not like it's a franchise, it is 2 movies at this point. The biggest compliment though was one of the film podcasts I listened to. The producer on the show had kept saying like, oh, I don't want to see Avatar. The first one's not that good. He went and saw the second one with family over, the break. And it won him over, and now he's an Avatar guy, so that's the joke. And now he's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go see it again, and stuff. And so, once you can get that, then you're good.
I'm having fun checking the box office numbers every day. Which I think, honestly, the first Avatar is the movie that made me like doing that. I think it was like that phenomenal kind of success that was like standing out that made me want to like look and check. And I've done it for lots of movies over the years, and it's like. I was expecting to do well, but I can't believe I'm like, Fireman from Twin Peaks. It is happening again. Like that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, well, it helps too that like Top Gun came in and started doing that again. Because that movie was starting to make money like at crazy levels that we hadn't seen in a while. So I know people were checking it then too.
It's another example of I think people are just like excited for something that isn't a superhero movie. Like it's not that they are tanky and not doing well, although they're very front loaded because they kind of die off a lot quicker than some other movies.
Yeah.
But like I think between Top Gun 2, Avatar 2, and then even some smaller movies that have been doing surprisingly well, like Terrifier 2 made a lot of money for what it was, and I think it's just a case of like. People want to go see varieties of movies, and it's not to say that superhero movies aren't going to make money anymore, but I don't think I think there's a thirst for other things, and I think we're seeing that kind of throughout the year, and then maybe in the biggest way with this one because it's doing juggernaut numbers.
Well, and on top of it too, again, the only place to see Avatar is at the movie theater, right? It's not streaming. There's none of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and people like that's something that they want to go to the theater for. So, same with Top Gun. I felt like Top Gun, it wasn't streaming anywhere, and the word got out like, yeah, you got to go see this in the theater and get the full experience. So, and that's what I think we've been missing, because I feel like outside of Endgame, there hasn't been like an experience Marvel movie. Everything's just kind of, I feel like they're just going through the motions at this point. Like Black Panther 2 was fine. It was a nice movie about grief, but it doesn't have that spectacle anymore. Everything's just, we're used to it. So maybe Quantumania will get crazy. Don't count on it. But I like the Ant-Man stuff.
It's nuts. We're at a point now where $2 billion for Avatar 2 is basically guaranteed at this point.
Yeah.
And that seemed like a silly thing to suggest just a couple of weeks ago. So so the first one it got to 2.7 billion originally, and with the re-release in China a couple of years ago, it actually got up to I think just about 3 billion. I'd have to double check the actual figure. But 2.7 was the original run, so we'll see. We'll see how close to it gets to that.
That's funny. Yeah. Never bet against James Cameron. Like, we all know this.
He was the first person to get over $1 billion with the movie with Titanic. No one touched that for a long time.
That was $97 too, man. Like,
yeah, exactly. But no one touched that for like a decade, basically. And it was only when people were starting to sniff at $1 billion that he came in with Avatar and went, "Oh, I could top that," and did 2.7.
Yep.
So here we are. He's going to be only like 5 movies have like hit 2 billion, and he's going to have like 3 of them in a few weeks' time, probably.
Yeah. I mean, that's why he's allowed to do whatever he wants, right?
He could do whatever he wants for Avatar 3, 4, and 5. Like, bring him on, like whatever. Like, go nuts.
Fun times. I'll have to get to the theater at some point. I don't think it's going anywhere soon.
I know. I think it's
stuff coming out. So.
But if you want to see it in one of the better screens, I would probably advise going before the end of January, just to make sure you get the IMAX or the Dolby Theater or whatever it is you've got access to. Yeah,
that's another thing I heard, that there's a whaling subplot in this one. And my wife, how I feel about bears is how my wife feels about dolphins and whales. So I'm a little bit worried to take her, and she hadn't seen the first one. So that might just be me going by myself on a Sunday or whatever. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't want to traumatize her. Like, this is a lady that makes me check if the dog survives in movies when we're watching them at home.
Yeah,
So,
maybe wise for her not to go.
Yeah, especially when it comes to something like that. You know, like the Cove is one that, you know, I don't even think she's aware of, and we're gonna keep it that way. You know.
Yeah, I'm keeping quiet because of the way it's spoiled it.
No.
So, but I enjoyed Avatar 2 for the rest, just in case anyone needs my opinion.
Yeah, no.
Over on our sci-fi movie podcast, the Atomic Cinema Experiment, our review was like 2 hours long, and there was lots of talks of character themes and all that sort of stuff. It was good stuff. So, yeah, let's get into the comics then, I suppose.
Yeah.
Get into things. So starting off with Detective Comics 1067, Ramvi and Ivan Reis on the art. So, yeah. We left off last time with Batman being frozen by Mr. Freeze as he was fighting the werewolf Gale down in the sub part of the city. And this issue kind of starts off with him frozen, kind of starting to thaw. The wolf's also sort of just naturally starting to thaw because of all the wolf heat or something. Like,
yeah, so his body temperature, and I also took that up as the asthma, that the demon that he uses, right? That's been keeping him alive for decades or centuries at this point. That was going. So I was a little bit like, how's Ramvi going to get Batman out of this? Because what I've enjoyed about this Detective Comics run so far is that he's just beating the ever-living piss out of Batman, right? Like, he is constantly putting Bruce in these scenarios.
Oh yeah, he got
that shows that how vulnerable he is.
He got
that it's
put out for like 3 days, and he was on Jim Gordon's couch recuperating. Yeah.
There's that, and now with this is with the same with Freeze. You know, Freeze froze him to get him away from the werewolf and has helped him thaw out. And it's just one of these things that, like, yeah, Bruce is very vulnerable right now. This is almost above him, you know, and it's going to take, like, it's not, I don't want to say it's Gotham reminding him, but it's, you know, he is human. And I feel like he's going to have to embrace some bat demon in order to overcome these guys. And I'm here for that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of sweet that Freeze wakes him up and makes sure he's okay. It's kind of a nice heartwarming quality to it, you know. Pardon the irony of that, because it's Mr. Freeze.
No, yeah, that's where he had done this to help him, and then this, like, I don't want to call it a rehabilitation because Freeze is still a villain, right? But the way that Rambi has been writing these villains that aren't not the Orgums, from Two-Face to who else have we gotten? We have Two-Face, the League of Shadows.
Talia, Freeze.
Talia.
Like, they all don't seem as bad as the Orgums. Yeah, they all feel like.
And I almost feel like it's going to be Gotham versus them. Like, the concept of, you know, the villains are going to have to team up with Batman to remind the Orgums that this is their town. That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting. Also, I don't know, did you read the backup?
I didn't read the backup. No, I didn't read the backup.
There's more of that from Two-Face's perspective in that. So, but I like what Freeze tells Bruce here about, like, Gotham's his Nora.
Yeah, actually, honestly, I thought that was legitimately one of the best lines I've read in a comic book in a little while. Him sort of, like, basically recognizing that Batman has this obsession the same way that he obsessed over his, like, frozen wife, and then Freeze having to deal with the fact that his wife says, I didn't actually need you and I don't need you anymore. It's like Batman's obsession with taking care of Gotham, and the question is, like, but does Gotham actually want or need Batman to take care of it? And I think ultimately the answer is going to be, to some extent, yes, because it's a Batman story and he's more of a heroic character than Mr. Freeze. But the idea of, like, comparing those two things and putting that into Batman's head and putting it into our head as the reader, I think is a very fascinating, you know, thinking, you know, bit of thought, a bit of thinking to do.
Because we've always said that Bruce is obsessed with Gotham, but it's been more like in a familial way, right? Like, he only exists because of Gotham being the way that it is. But for Freeze to point out, like, yeah, it was an unhealthy obsession, and it was only after I realized Nora didn't need me, I was able to move on. I feel like at the end of this will be a big, you know, key piece in how we think about Batman.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Freeze just wants to be left alone in what is effectively his version of the Batcave, where he's got all these like ice,
the ice cavern.
Yeah, he's got all these ice sculptures of his wife and stuff that he wants to, and he says, "No, I just want to be left down here with like these memories, because as much as I've in some way accepted that my wife doesn't need me, I'm still sort of holding on to this memory of her needing me because it made me feel important." So there's this idea that we're dealing with a story where Bruce is maybe going to have to deal with the possibility that Gotham doesn't want him anymore as Batman. And I think ultimately, of course, there's differences, and I think some of the natural differences that will come out is that there's a difference between a person and a city, and the city's made up of people, and so obviously these are things that are going to come out as we're going through the story.
Yeah, and just what Ram V's using with that, what we read, but that was the annual, right? Of the history of Gotham.
The flashback,
and, yeah, the flashback is that it wasn't necessarily the Waynes that were the avenging person that time. Is that Gotham will always have this Dark Knight that that'll work with it. And so I like what Ram V's doing here, where the Orgums are trying to get this that whatever that device is, I forget the name of it.
The seed. I'm just going to call it
the seed. Yeah, it has a seed that keeps these themes constantly going. And it's going to be much to their detriment, because it's also going to keep this Dark Knight. But it's going to have to be, Bruce coming to terms with that. Like, Gotham will always have a Dark Knight. It might just not be him. And that this is a cycle that's just going to keep happening. I think that's going to be the key to him breaking it. Especially after that conversation with Orgum, right? Like, it seemed like Orgum's like, hey, we're a lot alike, I feel like this is going to be that thing that makes him different, that changes Batman for the better.
Yeah, and then the family side of this issue, the Orgums are making their announcements. They're building this new place on top of where Arkham was, in honor of the village and the church that started the city and all that stuff. But we see like some of the ways that they're going to be doing things as the issue goes on. So they all take these masks because Gale almost got seen by Batman, like his real identity almost got seen. So they're actually concerned about that. So they've got these fancy, very dramatic masks that they're all wearing now whenever they're doing the stuff that they can't be seen doing.
I'm not gonna lie, I think it's dope. Like it kind of goes with that operatic thing that that when it kicked off, and just that each of them have like there's something more to these masks too, right? Like that they just look like these regular type masks, but they're almost charged with this dark energy. And it adds to their mystique as villains. And I love the fact that Ram V has created these original characters that I don't feel like I don't want to say copies, but there's no similarities to any of these characters with any other Bat villains, which I appreciate.
Yeah. It feels very different and unique. It feels like a fresh nemesis for Bruce to take on, especially if it's one where the entirety of Gotham and I think it's smart that the Joker's not around right now, and and it would be interesting if he does show up, because I think this idea of Bruce, at least in some level, even if it's not like an actual spoken alliance, and some level is on the same side with all the rogues of the city, I don't think the Joker can fit into that. So I think if the Joker does show up at any point, it's going to be, it'll
almost be a three-way war, because they wouldn't want Joker, but they don't want to team up with Bruce. And the similar is that Bruce is not going to team up with them because they have such different goals.
Of course,
so it'd be too much of a wild card.
Yeah, I think in a weird way at that point, the Joker like represents the true like unpredictability of everything. Like, and in no ways you can predict for him, so he doesn't really fit into either side's like world.
He's an actual Joker card, right?
Yeah,
like, he is wild, right? So, and that would work. But no, I don't think we're gonna be.
But in a weird way, though, if he does show up eventually, like, he could actually be like a thorn in like the Orgum's plans, because they can't predict for him, and maybe he'll do something that Bruce would never do that'll like kind of inadvertently save the day in a weird way.
Well, and get them off of their, get them on their heels a little bit so Bruce can make that move that he needs. I mean, I think that's the best case scenario, but it's kind of like Warren Jokes and Riddles, right? Where ultimately Bruce had to side with the Order over the Chaos, because that's just the way that he is. But to me, the Orgum's orders on the opposite side, if we're breaking this down into like a D&D alignment, they're lawful evil and Bruce is lawful good, right? Versus Joker's chaotic evil.
It's just a case of like, is he going to show up into the story, or is he going to just keep him out of the story because he doesn't really fit into it in any way? Like that's the real question, and I don't know the answer to that. But if he is going to bring him in, it'll probably be quite late on, I imagine. Also, I noticed that this part of the arc is called "Something in the Way," and I wonder if that's an intentional reference to the movie because it had the Nirvana song in the trailers.
Yeah, true.
Just a thought. But yeah, you see, so the lady one with the eyes, like she has like this eye mask that she uses.
Shabad.
Yeah, she goes to like the Wayne building and like meets with some people. And at first I was like, why isn't Lucius Fox just here? And it's because these people are going to commit suicide later on because she's made them.
That got darker than I was expecting, but then I was like, oh yeah, it's Ram V. I read Swamp Thing. Like,
Yeah, so her mask, like basically she's able to like trance them and make them like do what she wants, which is they're going to sell like a bunch of like Wayne real estate in the Narrows to the Organs, and then all these people who are making these decisions are going to commit suicide in a variety of ways in a couple of weeks' time to sort of erase the trail of like what's happened here. So super dark.
Yeah, so they're gonna do that, and then they're gonna try to take over the Narrows, which is they're calling the heart of Gotham. And all it kept making me think too is like this is the evil of gentrification, right? Because you're having these rich, this rich European family move in and raise the Narrows to the ground so they can rebuild and make it theirs. And just knowing how socially conscious Ram B is, just from reading Swamp Thing, I like that this is a thinly veiled shot at that kind of thing, especially with the way they did it with the dark. You guys are gonna sell all of this because it's almost as if Bruce was keeping the Narrows around because he understands the power that area has over the city.
Yeah, and of course
spiritually,
as they're doing this, the other guys actually burning it to the ground, and there's people running for their lives, and we leave off on this big cliffhanger where Bruce hears about this in the news, whilst Arzen's with him, to try and make friends with him. So the last page is him, gliding off towards the fire to try and save people and whatnot.
That's a great looking panel from Reis, because we haven't talked about the art too much. I like Ivan Reis, but it's usually within a lot brighter type stuff. So I always like him when he's doing Superman. This issue of Batman, it's kind of weird because of the shadows, and like it doesn't look bad, but it just feels a little bit off to me. And then we get to that final with Batman gliding into the Narrows, and it looks really good.
I think all the stuff with Reis looks really good. I think Ivan Reis is great at big comic book action and big spectacle shots. Maybe isn't isn't the best necessarily at just the sort of tense like one-on-one conversations, which I think all the Arzen and like Organ family stuff is very much that. It's all like conversations. It's all like looking ominous out of the city and making speeches in the monologues and the narration and stuff.
For sure.
So and maybe that's not Reis's strength, but obviously Reis is a very good artist, and when he has these big moments to play with, he
it doesn't look bad, but it feels like the pacing almost feels off. So, but yeah, no, that we get to that final page and it looks real good. So, like you said, the spectacle.
Yeah. And obviously you see Two-Face sort of in all this chaos at the end, like watching some of it. This idea that, like this family are going to be uncomfortably encroaching in all of the rogues gallery of Gotham and like their place in this city. And we've already seen like how awful like they've been to Two-Face, and like this idea that Harvey's actually the one pretending to be Two-Face and like is being forced to do all these evil things is really dark and sinister, and one of my favorite things of this arc so far. So I love that they're touching upon these things and and getting to it. So really good stuff. I've been enjoying what's been built in Detective Comics. It's the sort of thing where it wasn't like amazing from issue 1, but the more it's been building and the more the groundwork's been laid and all that stuff. Because I wasn't in love with the annual issue because I for my various reasons, but all the main story I think has been building in a very compelling way, and it's a very different type of villain for Batman to fight. And so making another villain be somewhat sympathetic in this potential coming war is very interesting. Yeah,
and I believe that Ram V also said that Freeze is his favorite, so being able to write him this way was like a dream come true. So you could tell this is something that he's thought about for a while, and it really showed through, because we've dealt with Freeze in other stories of him dancing this, kind of noble line. And here it's again, he's still a villain. It's like he's not rehabbed, but just like this understanding with Batman, it came off really well. So, I'm happy that Ram V gets to write, his characters how he wants them.
Yeah, yeah. So, no, very fascinating. But you read the backup, so you can give us some intel on that.
So this is the final part of the backup featuring Two-Face. It's a lot of inner monologue still, and this is when he goes to, earlier in this series they talked about he was supposed to kill this doctor, and it basically comes down to the Two-Face persona. The reason that Harvey is masquerading as Two-Face is because the Two-Face persona was in battle with the asthma that they had given him. And the Two-Face is trying to get control back of Harvey, but while also keeping this thing at bay until finally Harvey, denies the Two-Face persona so much that it can engage with the asthma one-on-one and reveals that Two-Face wasn't created when Harvey, had his acid thrown on it. Two-Face has always been there. Two-Face was the thing that protected him from bullies. It's that dark side that exists in everybody that, are you willing to go there? And that with Harvey, with the way that he was raised, with the abuse from his dad and the stuff that he had to do, as a lawyer, the Two-Face persona just kept getting fed until finally the acid was what allowed him to come out fully.
Yeah, and so, also literally gave him a face.
Right, and actually gave him a face, right? And so it's created the split personality because it had become so strong with Harvey constantly in battle of trying to who's getting in control. And that Harvey still has this strength because all Two-Face wants to know is who Batman is. And Harvey won't give it to him. And that's what's keeping him in check. So as we see this happening, Harvey's just going through the motions now because he wants the Organs to still think that the asthma is in control and that the Two-Face persona has defeated it. And now Harvey's back to fighting the Two-Face persona and trying to maintain that he's still working for them. But symbolically, he drops that gold mask that they had given him in the main story, to show that, like, yeah, no, I'm working for myself. I'm working for Gotham. So it's another one of those, kind of how we got with Freeze, is that he's not involved in Orgham's thing because this is his Gotham too. It's not just Bruce's Gotham or Batman's Gotham. As the villains are starting to show, or the Rogues Gallery is starting to show, like, no, we're not going to take the city down either. So yeah, it was really nice. The arts, that kind of wacky, kind of like pop art style at times when we get the Two-Face persona and him yelling at Harvey. So yeah, so far so good. Like, I don't feel bad that I've been reading those.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, what are you rating the whole issue then?
So the main book, I'm gonna give an 8.5. The backup, I'm gonna give an 8. So I'll give the full book an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to give it the 8.5 as well. I think it's building some really interesting things, and it wouldn't surprise me that if, much like running into Mr. Freeze here briefly, if we run into some other villains who can be at least a little bit sympathetic, over the course of the arc, to maybe be like, hey, yeah, these are villains, but there are villains, right? There are scoundrels, and ultimately maybe that's going to be a big, thing to play with later on, when we're really at war with the family. So, no, very, very interesting. So, that is Detective Comics. Action Comics 1050, Philip K. Johnson, Tom Taylor, and Joshua Williamson all writing, with Mike Perkins, Nick Dragotta, and Clayton Henry on the art.
Yeah, I saw your tweet as I was eating breakfast this morning, and I was like, oh boy.
I like the cruelty of giving me a couple of pages of good art at the start, and then shifting. It felt like most of the issue was Clayton Henry to me, but I mean, I don't know if I'm just maybe Dragotta's art I'm not as familiar with. Maybe I just didn't notice the change to that. But I was noticing the big heads though. On Clayton Henry's art, I'll tell you that right now.
The 5 heads.
Oh jeez.
Oh, that's true. That's why I know that name. So Nick Dragotta was on East of West. So
okay.
that's why I know that name. So I just had to pull them up. So yeah, so I know what pages are theirs now. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense.
The Clayton, I wasn't that as upset as you on the Clayton Henry art because there's some pages that look really, really good and some of the action stuff. But we always say that with Clayton Henry, right? That the action sequences tend to look a lot better than the, the profiles of them or
but
the bust up. So
yeah, but you give me a couple of Mike Perkins pages, which I think it was Mike Perkins at the start, a little Perkins. Yes. And I'm like, okay, there's a mood, there's an atmosphere, and then this ultra clean big head style that it goes to
does not match with Perkins whatsoever. There's zero complimenting to be done. So
no, absolutely. So it's mostly one story that I assume they collaborated on in the writing, and then there's like 3 epilogue endings that all kind of set up the 3 various books that we're getting coming out of this.
Yeah.
But the big thing in this is that Lex uses Manchester Black's powers, and it kills Manchester Black seemingly. And Manchester Black has a moment of defiance where he's like goading Lex by saying, "Hey, do you know what Superman says about you when he's on his own?" And he's like, "Nothing." He doesn't even think about you. All these millions and trillions you've spent trying to defeat him and get under his skin, he doesn't even think about you.
So I thought it was gonna be like, that Clark cares about you. He wants you to do well. But no, Manchester Black took the knife and twisted it because he knew his time was up. What can I say to Lex that's gonna mess him up more than anything? And it's like, he doesn't even think of you. That was so brutal. I loved it.
Yeah, and it was in character. That's the thing. Even though it may technically be true in the sense that Superman never brought him up because he was too busy dealing with Warworld and all the other shit, like the fact that Manchester Black would frame it this way because that fits his character more than this is more about Manchester Black's character than it is about Superman's character.
Yep.
But anyway, the big thing he does that we get revealed throughout the issue is that Lex, because I wasn't a fan when they announced that we were going to be putting the can of worms, the lid was going to go back on, and everyone was going to like not know Clark was Superman anymore. I was vocal at the time saying that I thought it was a shame to sort of try and retcon that so soon.
Mm-hmm.
And while I still think overall that, I will say the idea that it wasn't Clark's choice and that Lex is taking this from him because he doesn't want the world to look at Clark and John as humans and as one of them. He wants them to see them as other. The fact that he's taking this back, by force, and it gives Perry like a minor stroke. Trying to deal with this, and it's even the only thing I can compare this to bizarrely is something from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone remembers season 5 of Buffy, the main villain Glory shares like a human body with a guy named Ben, but anyone who like witnesses the transformation or like knows about it, like they just kind of like can't comprehend it and they just like forget it basically instantly. And it's kind of set up later in this issue that that's kind of what's going to happen with like any footage of Clark being Superman that where it shows that he is both, because that exists now because the secret's been out for a while. They'll basically just do, or even Westworld and other comparisons, they'll just basically look at it and go, this doesn't mean anything to me. I don't understand this.
No, I don't know. It's kind of how that's how I think about like the 5th dimensional, like their actual bodies. That's why they show up as imps, because we can't comprehend them. Like even in the arts, if you ever saw how in a Morrison book, their true forms, it's always just this mess of like letters and facial features and whatever, because our brains aren't supposed to be able to comprehend them. And it was a nice layer because I felt the same as you, that like, all right, well, I like that Superman and Clark are the same person, right? It gets rid of some of the silliness. But the reason that Lex did it was to make John and Clark both seem more alien to people, because now they they're not human. They're back to being the aliens. It is quite dastardly, right? Like, and then the fact that Lex tries to spin it off that he was doing Clark a favor, oh, you're way more interesting when you have the Clark Kent persona, but yeah, man, whoever was writing the Lex in this really had it nailed. I don't know.
From the sounds of it, because there was interviews with the writers this past week, it sounds like they were all sort of collaborating and like talking specifically about Lex and how to like how can Lex win? Like what can we do with Lex over these books to to make him like, you know, still the ultimate villain to Superman and all that stuff. It's funny because obviously there's the protective bubble over the Kents, and they explain that most Justice League members and Teen Titans and stuff all have like they all have built-in like blocks for like any telepathic attacks.
From Martian Manhunter, like he's trained them.
So
you know.
So they all still remember, and Clark's family happened to be under the bubble, so they all still remember. Right. But Perry, who comes over for dinner, obviously was outside the bubble when this actual you know, wave hit everyone. So he immediately started to have this like attack when he couldn't compute that Clark was Superman. And there's some interesting details brought up that I kind of like. I do like Batman saying to Clark, "Hey, you know, as much as you like this, you know, was it really fair that like Lois Lane was kind of reduced to just being Superman's wife? Yeah. After this secret came out?" And Clark kind of admits, like, you know, that was kind of an unforeseen effect of it. And I'm like, you know, that's a good point. Like,
in the meta commentary, it's something I didn't really think of, right? And that's kind of what it became. Is it was? Yeah. I mean, they still wrote Lois very strong. Like, I don't want to give like Tom Taylor or, you know, because that's really the only place we got Lois, right?
Yeah, but ever since the secret came out, she was basically just writing a book about Superman, and stuff. You know, she wasn't really being Lois and investigating stuff anymore. Right, and
that's what I'm saying. So even in the meta context, it was something that I didn't think about, and then when I look back at it, I go, yeah, she kind of was just like Clark or Superman's wife and Superboy's, you know, mom, and I was like, yeah, that isn't fair to Lois. Lois is you know, she can carry her own series, you know, so. That was that Batman point that out too. I thought that was pretty smart.
Yeah, that was good. Oh god, some of these heads. I'm just as I'm looking through this shit. Oh god, I hate them. Anyway, but then there's the other part of it, which is like he's worried that John, because John's always had this open kind of like secret. He's never really had the secret identity, at least from a relative age. Yeah. But then you see John like immediately seems to be kind of liking that no one knows who he is, and it's like if anything, being constantly out in the open before has been this kind of pressure that he didn't even realize he had until it's been lifted, and now it's like, hey, I can just go into a store and get a drink and no one will recognize me, and it's kind of freeing in a weird way. So you've got all this kind of stuff at play, but ultimately this is Lex doing this, and Superman like goes and deals with Lex and obviously brings him in, and Lex is like, I have to admit that, between everything going on with Dark Crisis and like you've been away for Warworld, it became clear, no, the world does need a Superman. I hate to admit it, but it can be my Superman. It can be like, let me fix you. I'll make you the best Superman you've ever been.
Yeah, that was the other thing where I was like, Lex, what are you on, bud? In what world was this gonna work? He's gonna be LexCorp Superman? Like, there's no way.
Yeah, not a chance. So I mean, Superman just like takes his purple and green robot like mech suit ass up to the moon, where he can't harm it because Lex immediately starts endangering civilians, and Superman's like, I'm not having this. We're going to the moon where I can have a proper conversation, and like, no, you're not doing this. And it's a big sequence. There's this punching in the moon and stuff. He ends up like punching the mech suit. He's still got his space suit underneath, so he's not like in danger. But he punches the mech suit away. So it's all gone. It does reveal that Superman's got a bit of a new ability, where he can kind of just traverse like large distances in space, like it's nothing.
Yeah. So I feel like that they were going back to the kind of golden age thing where he was like, "Look, I am Superman. I can do anything. I keep my stuff down for the benefit of everybody else. Don't mess with me." So I did like that because that was stern Clark. Like, he didn't threaten Lex, but he was like, "Don't test me."
Yeah, I'm cool with the threat, as it were, if you want to call it that. I don't necessarily like whenever anyone tries to add to Superman's power set. I tend not to like it very much because I think one of the things with having such a powerful being is there should still be firm rules so that we can understand when there's a danger to him and understand like as long as you have a set of rules and you adhere to them. I don't think it's too big. Yeah. I don't think he's too powerful. But when you keep adding on more powers and you keep sort of saying, now he can do this and he can, because it basically says here that time and space basically don't apply to me anymore. Like, no, that's too much. It's a bit too far.
No, it is, but again, talking about the meta narrative here, it's again, it's these writers going back to the golden age of Superman, and that like, this man could used to be able to move planets and stuff, right, in the comics. And it's just like, well, yeah, he never could stop. He just never flexed that much. And here, when there's this big threat from Lex, this is where he'll use that, because I don't even know how far Lex had teleported him to, but Lex had thought like, oh, he's out of my hair now, and he turns back around and Clark's right there.
Different star system, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and so I just like, again, the flex from Clark there. It was like, look, man, I don't like to have to go to that level, and I don't for everyone else's benefit. So please don't push me. And again, it was stern dad mode, and that's how I kind of like Angry Superman.
Yeah. So we get like 3 kind of final pages or final scenes that kind of set up the 3 books coming out of it. One's for Superman, which I'll be honest, the art here was so like suggestive, or so not suggestive. What's the word I'm looking for? Like Lex's head looks so weird that I didn't even realize this was meant to be Lex until I was like, who's this villain they're teasing in Striker's Island? And I'm like, oh no, this is just Lex in a prison cell. I don't know, the head. I was thinking, is this maybe like, is it doing Simon or something? Like, because his head was drawn so big and bulging. I don't know. But anyway,
bulbous.
So it's teasing Lex for Superman issue 1. It says to be continued there. So that's what Williamson's going to be leading off with. And then the tease for this, John's book that Taylor's doing is that someone's going around the multiverse killing different Clark Kents. So,
that reveal with the page turn.
Yeah.
Like, I knew who it was going to be, but I wasn't ready. So you turn it and it's Val Zod, who Tom Taylor created. Like, such a nice touch.
Yeah, so he's the one investigating this, and they're going to come to John for help because he's not a Clark. Yeah. So that's very interesting. That sets up that book. And then the action setup, which has been teased for a while, is the Metallo stuff. But you get this like next part of it, which is that Lex via hologram is like there to greet Metallo as he's waking up. And they've given him a very human-looking body where he can feel and taste and smell again. He has a bit of a green glow and a little bit of like metal coming out of his chest, but for the most part, he looks human again. So he's given him like a physical form that feels human, which of course comes with a price, as it always does with Lex. But I
just feel like John's not going to play ball. I don't feel like Corbin's going to play ball with Lex here, right? And so I like this. I like Android Metallo. Like, it's always cool when they make him like this monstrosity, kind of how he was. But I like kind of when he can blend in with everybody, and it's just the kryptonite heart that kind of glows. So this with the T, where it almost looks like he had like a like an autopsy. It kind of gives us like this macabre, figure to it. Metallo. I really like that. So, but yeah, man. I like the way that reveal happened, because it was all through that first person. We hear them talking about him.
Which, to compare it to other cyborg stuff, it's very RoboCop to like have him wake up in first person and hearing them talk about what they've done to him, and then see the reveal of what he actually looks like. And given what Lex did, by threatening his sister and like framing her for a crime and stuff, like I suspect that Metallo will feel forced into helping him for a while, but maybe he'll get like a moment of defiance later on. He'll get to rebel against Lex, and that'll be kind of a fun, uplifting moment, I'd expect. So I think the art in this obviously is very wonky. I hate the Clayton art with a passion, but I do like what it sets up for the status quo of Superman going forward. I think Lex feels really villainous by taking this like this idea that taking back the secret is actually something that will hurt Clark and his family. And the way that Lex, or in Lex's warped mind, is really villainous, and I really like that for him as a villain. I also really like setting up Metallo for the Action Comic stuff, and I like the plot to set up for the super. I keep wanting to say Superboy because it's John, but it's not. You know what I mean?
It's the other Superman.
But setting up that for that book, I also really like. So I like everything that's set up for going forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say the making John and Clark seem less human to everyone. That also fits in with the Red Sin story too, from that motivation. So I like that it threads that needle fairly well too. So it seems to be that's what the status quo of the villains wanting to do with Superman is, like let's remind people that he's an alien, so people don't trust him. And again, I like having villainous Lex back. Like, we had that kind of tweener Lex for a while that was like, even when he was doing stuff with Perpetua, there was a sense of he's trying to make things better. Now it's just basically to like, I hate Superman for reminding me that I'm not, or for reminding me that I'm just human. We're back to that petty Lex, and man, do I love a petty Lex. So I think we're in a good spot with Superman going forward.
Yeah, it feels like an actual line of comics again, which is cool. So, very good. What do you give it? Action Comics 1050?
Oof, if the art was a bit stronger, I would go just a scotch higher, but I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I need to go with like a I'm gonna go with 7.5.
Okay.
Because they are.
Yeah. Like, I had forgot about the bulbous head Lex until you had brought it up. I tried to put it out of my brain. Because, yeah.
I legitimately got confused at who I was looking at. Yeah. Because the art made it look like it was so bulbous that I was thinking, is this some sort of other character?
Yeah.
And I was
it's just
who's
Lex. This mutant?
Yeah, it's just Lex. Yeah. It's just Lex with a badly drawn head. I'm just gonna go 7.5. But I do like everything that's set up for the super line going forward, which is nice. It's just the same shame that Clayton Henry, I think, is on one of the books. It's just a shame. But hey, all right. DC versus Vampires, issue 12. James Tynion the fourth, with Matthew Rosenberg writing, with Otto Schmidt on the art. So this is the final issue of this, and I gotta say, didn't really like how this ended.
I don't think it stuck the landing at all.
Well, one of my complaints about the last few issues, and basically the last half of the book, so it was great and had the big reveal of Dick around issue 5 or 6. The last half of this book, which I complained about last issue, was just these three groups of characters doing their own missions. But I was like, but it's got some build up. The ending with Supergirl maybe being in that explosion was kind of like a good cliffhanger, and she's going to swoop in and help save the day in Gotham once she's like powered up again. I was shocked when I got to the end of this issue, and all three of the groups, Oliver in Smallville, Supergirl with the others in Australia, and the main stuff in Gotham, it never interacted. They never affected each other. It was basically just the story ended with Barbara and Dick in like some sort of vampire romance revenge way, where Barbara becomes queen of the vampires after being bitten, sired by Dick, and like the Supergirl thing didn't even matter. Like she's back and she's got her powers again, and but nothing comes of it.
No, but they also they changed Clark. We never saw Clark after that, right? So we don't even know what a a vampire Kryptonian is like capable of, because they kept that hidden the whole time. So she's still not out of the woods. Like, yeah, she got her solar energy back, but now she has to still hang up above the clouds. So like you said, it doesn't matter. She had no impact on the outcome. And I just felt like they were writing for the sequel more than they were trying to finish a story. And like, it's not even the fact that like Barbara becomes the vampire queen. It's the way in which it happens. It happens so quickly. And like, I missed the part where like I saw her drink the blood, but I don't know. I just felt like the way that she was, I didn't feel like she would just give up that quickly. Like, Dick or not, you know what I mean? Like, she was so like ready to go in there and kill him and end this, and even brought Harley to do it. But then it all just seemed like she wanted to be queen, and that was her end game. And that didn't track for me with anything else. And then even just the way that it's told through the art, everything happens just so quickly. I thought I was missing a page in my book, because I kept flipping back to figure out like what led to her deciding to drink his blood. And it was just the page before she was fighting him, So yeah, it was very much a letdown.
I wasn't really into the way it wrapped up either. Like, it kind of felt like they were going for this thing where, because Dick was in her dreams, and it was kind of like that vampire trance thing of like drawing in the victim kind of thing. But it never really felt like it really played with that, and it felt like as soon as she became a vampire, it was like, okay, now I'm queen, so now I'm going to change everything to do what I want to do. blah blah blah, and that was basically it.
Well, and then at that point too, right? Dick's dead. So wasn't their plan as if she kills Dick, everyone would turn back?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's why she was going to kill Dick, because if you kill the king, right, and everyone reverts back, then that was the end game. But then she just becomes queen.
No, I don't think they ever suggested that everyone would turn back. No.
Gotcha. So she just wanted to kill him because
Well, he's the king, so you take out the king. Yeah. They're much weaker overall as a result, right. Kind of thing. There's a big thing where Captain Cold fires his ice gun into the sky to create like a beam of like solar light to come down and hit Supergirl, which is it's a big moment.
To freeze the ash in the sky. I did like, even though it's kind of, when I think about it, it's really stupid, but him going like, "Oh, I can't do that," and then he goes and does it anyways, and sure, it blows up the gun and himself in the process. But they just set up how that's impossible, and then it happens anyways. So there's just a lot of that in this book of, oh, we can't do that, and then they do it anyways. So yeah.
I mean, I didn't really have a problem with that. It's just he's doubting it. He doesn't think it can work, and then it kind of does, but at a price, whatever. Like, I'm fine with that. My bigger problem is that none of the three plots actually ended up affecting the overall. Like, it didn't feel like they came back together in any way, shape, or form at the end. My expectation the whole time was that if Supergirl was going to get powered up, she was going to fly to Gotham and intervene and be like the turning point for the fight. Yeah. Whether it was going to succeed or fail ultimately in the end, and give us a sad or good ending is irrelevant. But it never actually played into it at all. Babs just becomes the vampire queen and says, but there's still human enemies out there. And there's just a couple of panels of like Oliver with his people in Smallville, Supergirl with her people in Australia, and that's it. And it's like, it does feel like it's been left open intentionally so there can be a sequel. Yeah. But honestly, it's left me not want to read a sequel.
If there's a sequel, I'm not interested in it. Just because, because again, like, okay, Superman's still out there as a vampire, so that kind of puts Kara in check, right? What use is Kara having powers if she can be turned at any point? So it kind of takes their card away. I did like that they put over Mary Marvel a little bit here, talking about how she didn't go down like the rest of her family. I did like that. It made Mary feel pretty special, and if there was any caveat to a sequel, I'd like to see how that, goes, like Mary versus the rest of the Shazam family. I think would be interesting. But outside, I really did enjoy the Oliver stuff though with Swamp Thing, and him taking out Hawkman, because I do love the dynamic that Hawkman and Green Arrow have.
Well, how did
this love-hate relationship?
Explain how he did that though. How did he take out Swamp Thing, or take out Hawkman rather?
Yeah, so he just wasn't it that he it was the old rope-a-dope. He let Hawkman think that he was gonna, that they have the upper hand, and then he used wasn't it a big piece of the Swamp Thing, like almost like a sword?
Oh, you're struggling here.
It through him.
No. So he has a bow and arrow made out of Swamp Thing parts. He fires them with a bunch of the Swamp Thing arrows, and then he says, "Swamp Thing, do it," and then Swamp Thing makes all the arrows expand and grow.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I like that. That's where they're thinking, because it was a lot of Hawkman talking to, Ollie about just give up. You're not going to win, and it just goes into their whole dynamic. So, for some reason I thought that he had maybe I'm confusing him with the Avengers versus the Vampires story, because I remember one of those characters using Man-Thing in a similar way, to grow like a wooden like spear that they stabbed through one of them, but yeah, ultimately this left me super disappointed. I really liked the first half when there was that mystery, and like anybody could be a vampire, and we had the death of Zan, and Jaina trying to track who had done it with Bruce. It was working really well there, because the story was more than just humanity versus this vampire apocalypse. And once it became kind of about the vampire apocalypse, it started losing steam for me, and ultimately ended with a thud.
Yeah, I think Superman, by the way, I think he might have been killed already in the spin-off book we weren't reading.
Oh, well, that's a shame. I wish they were more clear about that. But still, she can be turned though, because he was hypnotized by Wonder Woman.
I know,
So,
but you kept bringing up like Superman's, and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like he is. So I googled Superman and DC versus vampires, and it sounds like his story was done in that, and he's because it doesn't feel like he's a factor in like these last few issues at all.
No.
So
completely removed.
Well, I get why you were saying it. It felt like it didn't fit with what the story was doing, so I was just corroborating. No, something fell off.
Well, and I just get a little like, I don't say irritated, but like Rosenberg called me out specifically because I kept saying like the whole Kryptonian thing with the vampires is the vampire lore wasn't strong enough for me for the Kryptonians. Like I wanted to see more of Superman and how this reacted with him, because they even mentioned, though, at a certain point, once the sun was blocked out, right, it took away Kara's Kryptonian abilities. So now Superman's just running around with vampire abilities, you know? So I needed to see why he was such, because he kept mentioning Superman up there with the Leagues of Wonder Woman and whatever is kind of their ace cards, but he never impacted the story. Once he got turned, we never saw him again. So that's why I kept waiting for maybe like, oh, Kryptonians kind of can fight through or whatever, and that made me hopeful for Supergirl. Like, yeah, once she gets her powers back, it's gonna be hard to turn her. But then I always felt like I don't know where Superman is, so what's going on with him? I just wish it was clearer. But yeah, Rosenberg was like, oh, so you're upset over a thing that we haven't addressed yet, but it hasn't been addressed. Like, right? We never really addressed the Superman thing. So,
well, maybe in the miniseries we didn't read.
Yeah, maybe.
Because there was a spin-off 6-issue miniseries that we all dipped out after the first issue because it wasn't very good. No, I mean, it ends with kind of this like hopeful moment of like, okay, it's kind of a bad ending, but Supergirl's got her powers back, so it ends with that final word hope on the last page. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know, the entire back half of this book felt like it was spinning its wheels, and it felt like these 3 separate plots were taking ages to get anywhere. And the hope is that at least the payoff to them all finally sort of culminating would lead to a big finale. And instead, it felt like they didn't affect each other. And I don't know, the back half of the book just feels like kind of a waste of time. It's like all of the good ideas, like it feels like it really does feel like a story of 2 books. It feels like the first 6 issues were one book, which was very, very good. And it was a really fun way of like exploring the idea of vampires in the DC universe, with the big twist of Nightwing being the one who was like behind everything, at least to a point. And then the back half of the book has just been this like wheel spinning, like not search for MacGuffins, but just like these 3 different individual teams going off to do their own plots. They just feel like they were building up and taking ages to get anywhere. And then the ending just feels like, oh, there's not even an ending here. Again, it feels kind of just really left open so there can be a sequel if they want there to be one. Yeah, I have to give like the entire back half of this book, which wasn't like hard to read, and there was fun moments here or there. I mean, even in this issue, there's a fun moment where Dick and Barbara are talking about Bruce, and like Harley just goes, "Who's Bruce?" And I thought that was kind of funny, because you know, obviously they're not hiding his secret identity anymore because it doesn't matter. But they've also not specifically told her that Bruce Wayne was Batman, so I thought that was kind of funny. But like that's it. That's all I've really got to say about it. The entire back half of the book just feels very unfulfilling, and it felt like it was just kind of a series of like busy work to like have all the characters doing something that didn't really culminate to anything meaningful in the end, and that feels like a big shame to me.
Yeah, I agree. I finished this book, I think, on Wednesday night, and was just like, okay. What next comic am I reading? You know, and it just kind of left me like, I didn't like this, so I need to wash it out. So
yeah,
that's a disappointment too, because I like Tynion and Rosenberg as writers, and I guess I expect more from them, especially pulling threads together, because you know both of them have in other books. So
yeah, well, we know that Tynion had the idea and then left it for Rosenberg to script. I do wonder, like, if this was originally 12 issues in the plotting phase, or it kind of feels like it shifted in the back half. It feels like the back half was written by someone different, and and even though I've liked some of Rosenberg's other stuff, I do wonder if it became more a Rosenberg book in the second half, especially since the tie-in series, which was also Rosenberg, I think, was instantly like, no, I don't like this very much. So I have to speculate how much Tynion was involved with the back half of the story specifically?
Yeah,
because it feels like a step down.
That's a great question.
A huge step down, even, I would say. So it's a shame because there probably is like a good version of this where it's like, oh, we're doing like Vampire Nightwing with like Barbara being like his main like, you know, like love interest / victim that he's trying to draw in with these vampire like, you know, spellbinding, hypnotizing powers.
Because I could accept Barbara taking the vampire thing if she was mortally wounded, right? Like someone that wasn't Nightwing, one of his guards, Wonder Woman or whatever, mortally wounds her, and Dick can't bear to see her die. So that's where he's like, just join me and live, right? And then she executes her plans. Like, well, I'm just going to be queen then, because clearly you're too weak for this, you know. Then I could have bought that, but this it seemed like she went in there ready to take him out just because she wanted to be queen, and that didn't gel with anything else. That, you know.
But was that her plan going in though? I don't know if it was.
I don't know. That's the thing. That's why it's such an odd choice there, you know?
I mean, I think one of the things you said earlier that I really agree with is that it feels like the moment where she decides to give in just feels like a nothing moment. I'm like, yeah, if she was really fighting this and then sort of like succumbs to it in a moment of weakness or in a moment of like desperation, that should feel like a big moment, and it just kind of feels like it happens in a panel. It's just like, now she's accepting the blood. That's it. Like, you know, like give us like some narration from her or something where she's like scared and scared of dying and like, you know, succumbs to it, but it just kind of happens like a nothing moment. I don't know. Honestly, this is a very disappointing final issue, and it kind of comes in a weird position where the back half of the book, you know, issue 7 onwards, was kind of not as good as the rest, and it started to feel like we're waiting for the final issue to justify what this last 5 issues has been, and I don't think it did. So I think it's extra disappointing because of that, because we were hoping it was going to save it in a way, and it didn't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a shame.
Big time shame.
All right, what are you giving DC versus Vampires?
I'm gonna give this a 5.5.
That's like a death sentence coming from you. Yeah, something in the 5 range sounds about right. Honestly, massive letdown, to be honest. I think the back half of the book turned into a massive letdown overall, but this final issue really just was, it felt like you didn't really have a good plan of where this was going. So it just hurts it all even more in hindsight.
It almost feels like, I don't know, Bab's a vampire now. That's what that felt like, you know?
So. All right. Blue Beetle Graduation Day issue 2. Josh Trujillo and Adrian Gutierrez on the art. So Jaime has been banned from superheroing from the Justice League and is just working in a restaurant with his aunt over the summer, like he was told he was going to. Yeah,
and Palmyra City. So I thought that it was going to be somewhere in Texas, but it seems like it's somewhere in Southern California, judging from, you know, the locales that he's talking about. And granted, it could be anywhere. You know, piers and sunsets aren't just, you know, key to Southern California, but the way the street that he talks about the restaurant being on feels very much like Olvera Street in downtown Los Angeles. So I do love that it's keeping kind of that flavor of, you know, Jaime's a Latin American guy, and the book's keeping that whole vibe still. Even though it's out of El Paso, now it's in this new city. And he seems to be adjusting not so well, right?
No, like, he's miserable. He's not with his friends. He's sending them messages and basically just like complaining about the fact that he's got nothing to do and no one to be around. So he ends up going to Ted's building in the area to, I don't know, just reach out to someone more than anything. And he gets attacked by what we're calling dynasties.
Yes.
As
dynasties. I'm just trying to say it like if she was a luchadora.
All right. I was like, is that actually how you might pronounce dynasties. It, or are you just taking a stab in the dark?
I'm guessing that it's said with that kind of accent, right? Just because of where they're at and the way that it's spelled, you know. So I'm imagining Penta saying it. and it would be something more akin to that than Dynasties, you know.
Okay.
But yeah, it's essentially a gold beetle, right? If he's Blue Beetle, this is a gold beetle. So
she showed up last issue, and she shows up to fight him here. Eventually, Ted comes in his Blue Beetle outfit to help fight her back. And what's interesting is the suit actually comes off of her, and we see what she looks like. And she's still kind of like, villainous. She still doesn't seem to want to cooperate. We also have Victoria Cord, Ted's sister, who's actually running the company, show up and meet Jaime for the first time. So it sets up that this is another teenager or someone who's been taken over by a scarab-like entity, and that's who's been fighting Jaime. And Ted's like, look, I'll give you a pass to come out of the building. You can hang out and have like a non-paying gig here, but for tax reasons, we can't pay you anything.
I love that where he goes that he goes, you can come and work with me. I know you're kind of lonely at your aunt's restaurant, but for tax purposes, it's an unpaid internship. It's very much blue and gold humor.
Yeah.
There. So.
Well, Ted's sister even gives him shit for hanging around with Booster. Ultimately, all that really happens after that is that he goes back, not home, but like where he's staying just now at the restaurant, and his aunt is like, you're working a double shift tomorrow, but your friend showed up to see you. And he goes back outside, and who is it but Starfire? And the artist of this book has drawn her with a ridiculous amount of hair.
Yes. Definitely going for that Titans TV show vibe of the hair. Like they have the curls and everything. So that's what I was getting.
Well, I think it's meant to be like a mixture of hair, but also like the fire energy that comes off of her is like. But it's quite comical because it just looks like a huge amount of hair in that last page.
Well, because they tend to draw, people tend to draw Starfire like that with the bushy hair. So here, the fact that it was going more towards like ringlets and whatever, it does give it that appearance that there's way much more of it.
Yeah.
Just real quick, I pulled up Victoria Cord because I'm like, I'm not that familiar. I know Ted Cord for the most part. So turns out that Victoria Cord is going to be played by Susan Sarandon in the Blue Beetle movie that's coming out this summer. So I think this is the first appearance of Victoria Cord in the comics. So by the time this is wrapped up, that movie should be out. So I'm sure this is going to be a big character going forward.
Well, no, this will be finished before the movie comes out.
It's only 6 issues, huh?
Yeah, because the movie's coming out in the summer or something like that. Yeah, so
yeah, that's right. So,
if it does come out, like after the Batgirl movie, I'm not convinced it'll see the light of day. But
hey, I saw a movie poster for it at my local theater when I went to see the Fablemans. Okay. So yeah.
It's this weird thing though, because we know that they're scrapping everything and starting fresh. Outside of the Batman, which is getting a sequel, and I guess Joker, but like everything else is starting fresh with a new universe. So it's just kind of weird that we've got a couple of these movies coming out that are just like, you're coming out and then you're going to be forgotten about because we're not continuing anything.
But no, I liked a lot of this with Jaime trying not to transform, but the Scarab doing it anyways. And then you find out that this girl, that's Dynastis, her, it seems like she has more of an open communication with her Scarab. So I'm wondering if this is like, if this Reach war that's going on, maybe it's almost like a Civil War type deal, and that so these two Scarabs on opposite sides, or something. But it just seems they're more in communication than Jaime is with his, because his is reverted back to speaking Reach, and he can't understand that. So.
Yeah, Starfire just shows up at the end and says the planet is preparing for war, and you're the only one who can stop it. So what Starfire knows or why she's coming to recruit Jaime when the Justice League have said he's to, stay grounded. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a reasonable enough read. Like it's much like the first issue. If it went in quick enough, it has a couple of moments of humor. But it's not a standout. Like, it's not a thing where if there was a lot of books, I probably wouldn't keep up with it. But it was a light week, so
I like it. It's it's kind of what I'm looking for in a Blue Beetle book, and it's a quick read. So I don't have to think too much about it as I'm reading it. It's very action packed. I think the art is doing a lot of fun stuff. with the Beetle and like
it's definitely it's cartoony. You know, it plays with like eye sizes and things. You know, like that last panel in the last page where it's Jaime's like eyes are like bulging because he's what he's hearing. You know, it's playing with some of those like more expressive characteristics and stuff, which is fine. Yeah, it's a decent book. Like I'm not like over the moon with it. I'm not rushing to recommend it, but I'm also not mad at reading it either. Yeah, no.
I mean, it was the last thing that I read. Well, Sergeant Rock actually was. It was the second to last thing that I read this week. Just no, not a lot of urgency to read it, but yeah, I'm still going to. It's fun.
All right. What you rating it?
I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
Yeah, I'll just go with a 7. I think just a straight 7 for me. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. That's all I've got for you. The Nice House in the Lake, issue 12. James Tynion IV writing with Alvaro Martinez Bueno on the art. So yeah, let's just start off with the lead here, which is I got to the last page and it said the words "End of Cycle 1," and I thought, Tynion, you beautiful bastard.
Yep.
You beautiful.
So I'm ready. I'm ready for this to be like, okay, knowing Tynion's style, we're not going to get all the answers, but I feel he'll leave us in a spot where it's like, oh, that was a nice story. You know, I wonder what's next for him. I wasn't expecting this to go to a second part.
Honestly, I feel like there's going to be at least 2 more. Like, if this is the end of cycle 1, I'm expecting at least 2 other like series to come out of this. Like, and this issue is very good, and this issue is doing a lot of great stuff with revealing stuff about Walter and Nora, specifically revealing that she kind of knows some stuff and did know some stuff from before about this place and how it works and all the rest of it, and we'll get into that. But as it was getting towards those last couple of pages, I was kind of feeling like, yeah, but we set all that stuff up at the start about them in the future, and it looked like things hadn't gone so well, and especially since this book sets up some things about them trying to make it look everything's going okay as part of like what's going to be going on. So when I was getting towards the end, I was like, there's only a few pages left, and I feel like how much of this can really feel. It feels like there's a lot to get to still, and then it got to that final moment, and it was like end of cycle 1. I'm like, you beautiful bastard.
Once we got to the text pages there, and I was like, oh, what is all this?
Yeah, because it adds so much to what we've already got going on. Yeah.
And then I'm just like, the way that it adds to the pacing, because you turn that page and then you get to these texts and you're reading the conversation, right, between Nora and why am I blanking on the main guy?
Walter.
Walter. And I'm like, okay, that's where this ended. What is this? It almost felt like a post-credit scene that puts the whole rest of the movie in perspective. And then I got to the end of that second page at the bottom, and it went off, and I turned the page, and you see that this beautiful little, it's the house on the lake, and everything looks serene, and then basically end of part 1. And you're just like, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And the first part of this is like open chaos. Like I had no idea where any of it was going, like in the best way.
Oh yeah, it basically boils down to the second artist is with Walter. And Walter's basically saying, look, you've got 3 choices, right? This is what it boils down to. You can either, I can wipe everyone's memories and we can all go back to like not knowing what's going on and continue that way. I can't remember what the second choice was, but the third choice, which is the important one, is that I let you kill me, and you keep the balance because it's actually kind of lucky that one of you died because only might be 10 people in here, and now we're back to 10. So as long as maybe one of the artists like maybe read a few medical books so that they can pretend to be the medical person,
a doctor, you can pretend, you can play it doctor, but he goes, my supervisors will get mad at me for letting you guys overpower me, but the experiment is still ongoing, so they'll mostly leave you guys alone.
Well, yeah, but he also says they won't even notice that I'm gone for a long time. Like, maybe it may be 100 years before they even come and check and find out that I'm not here. And at least at that point, the experiment will have been successful enough that they'll maybe let it go. Maybe they'll kill you then, but at least you've had 100 years of living before that happens. But if you don't, if you create chaos, then they'll know very quickly that something's wrong, and they'll come and stomp you out, and that'll just be the end of it.
And all I can think of is how this book opened, right, with all the fire, and Nora looking like she was in a post-apocalyptic event, and that's not how this book ends at all. So, what the heck is in store for cycle 2 and 3, or let's just say 2, because we're
we're getting ahead of ourselves, but
but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it sort of reveals that there's other pods, there's other like groups of humans that have been preserved, and this is just Walter's group. And he kind of, and it's sort of like this thing where all throughout the series, it's been setting up that he cares about the people that he's picking. Yep. And in this issue, it kind of makes it clear that he wasn't supposed to pick people he cares for. He was supposed to pick the right people. And he's already kind of broken the rules by picking people that he had feelings for and that he wants to live. And that's already him breaking the rules. And it also reveals that he did speak to Nora, and it was set up numerous times throughout the book that him and Nora had this connection where they talked like in ways that he didn't talk with anyone else. And that before all this started, he's flat out saying, like, we don't get all the conversation, we assume that she knows a lot about what's about to happen. But we get the tail end of it, which is, okay, you're all going to go to sleep, and then when you wake up, it'll be like you just arrived at the house, and you won't remember how you got here, blah, 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 blah. All this stuff we've kind of known about. But she's like, hey, this isn't going to work. Like, they're going to, within a couple of months, they're going to rebel, and it's going to crescendo into chaos. And he's like, yeah, you're right, it is. The only way that people are going to actually become peaceful and actually continue is if they think they've defeated Walter, and then kind of just accept that this is their status quo and live on from there. Like, if they don't think they've won and that they've made a choice to like live peacefully, then they'll always rebel against it. So even this, like, let's let them think they've beat me and that they've killed me. So he's not really dead. Like, they think they've killed him in this issue.
It's the illusion of choice. He allowed them to think that they had their fate in their own hands, which is what he needs them to do anyways. Because the fact that they were so close, he was so close with all of them, I feel is what led to all the problems, right? And so, because I think that they know Walter, so the fact that Nora was in on this though, and was kind of the mastermind behind it.
Well, that's the thing though.
That's what got me.
I have to assume that because he is close with them though, like all of the other experiments, right, with other groups of humans, I have to assume they're all going to fail. Because they don't have this layer to it. They don't have this layer where they have this illusion of choice, where they understand that they're accepting that they're the last living humans, potentially, and that there's no Earth to go back to, if they're even on Earth anymore. That's a question that's raised. They could be on a spaceship for all we goddamn know.
Right.
So, this idea at the end, which I thought really made the whole thing very compelling, is that this moment where Nora still remembers this conversation now and still knows that Walter's really alive and that this is all kind of a ruse to make them all live like they're supposed to. She knows that, and he has to trust that. He has to trust her and trust that she won't reveal this. And he says at the end, in the last couple of pages of his narration, that this is like the first time he's really felt this like sense of like one of them's got power over him. And that trust is like real love. Like maybe Nora wouldn't phrase it that way, but he's feeling this real sense of love because he's having to be trusted, and like he's having to trust one of them and give them the power to maintain this. And this idea that that's what's actually going to like potentially succeed, even though we know on some level it doesn't, because we've seen glimpses of the future and it looks like hell. And if it does look like hell, what happens when his like supervisors or superiors show up and start asking questions?
And the guy who had his, the doctor that, his wife is the doctor that got killed. He still is like wanting vengeance on Walter, right? Even though like he's dead, I'm sure that like that's a thread that's going to keep going, because he holds Walter responsible for the death of his wife, So just because he's dead doesn't mean he's over it. So that's another thing that continues.
Oh, for sure. I just think it's this really fascinating thing that this issue, more than any of the other issues, really convinced me that Walter does care for these people. And even the fact that he picked them, he wasn't supposed to, like, it's not so much that he wasn't supposed to care about the people he picked, but he's picked these people specifically because he cares about them, and not because they were the right choice for whatever this experiment was.
Well, and the fact that they all know each other too through Walter, he's the connection to all of them. You know, it's not that just that he cares about them, but they all know each other as well. So there's dynamics there that are built in already too. You know, so maybe that's also part of his key, that maybe they will be successful and something happens, like a sabotage or something, and that's why it looks like hell. But Tynion has really written this thing where now anything can kind of happen, right? Like storytelling wise. But because we're so invested in all of this, that we're just kind of there for the ride. But yeah, I can't believe when I got to that tech stuff at the end, it was mind blowing, like actual mind blowing. The stuff about trust and you know,
like the idea
having
that,
power over him.
Yeah, one of them,
something he has to be okay with.
One of them had the choice to betray him and chose not to and keep the secret. And that is probably, like, even though he's felt friendly with them in the past, but it's all been kind of based in this lie because he's pretending to be a human, right? And any times that he had a real conversation with them about who he really was, he erased their memory. But this was an example of someone knowing exactly the situation they're in and choosing to uphold what he wanted or what he had agreed with them was they chose to agree with them, even knowing to some extent what he really is, and that makes him feel this connection that it's like, oh, in some way him befriending them might actually be what makes this experiment work versus the other ones that might all fail.
Right. It's he knows that Nora cares for him back, right? That it's mutual. And that's what it's based off of now.
Well, no, that's how he's interpreting it. I mean, arguably, she just like agrees logically that if we're going to keep this up and like not attract the attention of people who'll just wipe us from the map, that, you know, she might just logically agree this is how it has to work. This is how we stay as a CAM group. Not necessarily because she cares about Walter. Although I think going forward, the story is quite interesting if it does become clear that some of them do care about Walter, even once they know who he really is.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, really, really, really good storytelling. And I think this is one of Bueno's best looking books since we came back from the break. You know, all the stuff is really clean. A lot of that last panel of the house on the lake. Yeah, the art's really strong on this one.
Yeah. And it adds this extra layer to it that even this is still part of the manipulation. Like, not part of the experiment per se, but the idea that it's part of the manipulation to sort of get them to fall in line with the experiment is really quite interesting. That one of the best pages is probably when he's sitting waiting for their sort of like decision, and they all come in, and it's this 2-page layout where it's this big wide panel at the top where he's just kind of hunched over in the foreground, and the entire group of characters is sort of like watching over his shoulder. It's just, it really paints this idea that they're all hanging over his neck. This decision. So, really good stuff. And even the talking about killing him and how is anyone actually prepared to do that? Because it's one thing to accidentally shoot someone like it just happened a couple issues ago. It's another thing to like make the choice to murder someone.
They actually murder someone with malicious intent, you know, because they feel like they have to. So, no, very good stuff. And there's all these like, other conversations that you get through, like the messages and the emails of people agreeing to come on the trip, which kind of like gives it this bookend quality to the first issue, because it's like, we're kind of like tying up the loose ends of like how everyone came on this trip. The only issue is that I may have to reread all this before the second series starts, just to make sure I've got all of it in my head. I mean, to be honest, I still can't keep all the characters straight. Like, you know, because there's still a lot of characters and all the dynamics. You know, I know the main ones, like the two artists, and Nora.
I think it'll benefit the reread before the second series. Absolutely,
for sure.
Well. And I might make the effort because it is so complex with all these characters, but I have to imagine it all lines up quite nicely. If you do keep them all in mind of who they all are.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like it's almost kind of like Lost in that way, where you find out that about the tail section. And it's like, if in the second one, are we going to see what the other experiments are up to? like,
Oh, that's a
or,
possibility. We could,
because now this just opened up that whole world now too. There's more than just what we thought, so it adds layers to the book. But yeah, I remember when this book got announced, I was like, oh, a horror book set on a lake. Is this going to be like, monsters and it's this completely different sci-fi psychological type horror. And so it completely upended my expectations.
Yeah,
so.
There's also a panel right before the ending as well, where you see kind of like the entire map of the like the lake, but it's like in like a hexagon, almost as if that's like what the dome is.
Yeah, just where they are, whatever aspect they're in.
Yeah, so if this is on a ship or if it's in some some other planet or something, but this is the shape of the experiment, is this hexagon. So yeah, really great visuals there. We've focused mainly on the last like 3 or 4 pages because the ending really is what makes all this special. Because like all of them like deciding what to do with Walter for the rest of the issue, it is quite exciting because it is them making a choice of like, how do we progress with the knowledge of the situation that we are in, and that there's these alien overlords that might come and kill us at any time, and the best path forward, regardless of how we're going to do it, is to just pretend that everything's okay and be peaceful and so on and so on. But then this little pivot at the end of no, like this was all an illusion of choice because Walter like wants it to succeed, and this is the only way that they'll actually find peace, is thinking that they've won in some way. So fascinated.
Yep.
But yeah, end of cycle 1. So yeah, but he's also speaking in hindsight as well, because he says it would take them longer for them to realize that they would need to fight to keep this this peaceful world that they've now got to themselves. So
yeah,
even then, this is so even the dialogue itself is hinting at all the big things to come, and all the conflict that's to come. So
so
that's very good. All right, what are you giving Nice House in the Lake? Issue 12.
I'm gonna give this a 9.
I'm going to go 9.5. I think this was an exceptional issue, and really put a nice undercurrent under everything else that we'd already had up until this point, and contextualized a lot of it. So, really good. All right. So, you read Sergeant Rock versus Army of the Dead issue. What is this one?
4.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah. So the last issue ended with them with half of Easy Company following Hitler's doctor, and so they're still following him, and they get to a checkpoint, and they don't know how they're going to get through. And Sergeant Rock's like, yeah, the whole point of a checkpoint, from a military standpoint, is don't let anyone through. So we're gonna have to take it over. So this issue is mostly an action sequence where they start causing trouble at the checkpoint. The Nazis send out some of the zombie creatures. They go to check the back of the truck that they're driving in, and the flamethrower member of Easy Company just completely cooks them. They end up in a chase scene where they have to ditch the truck in like the woods, because right past the checkpoint is a bunker, and they just start firing on them. So Easy Company that half has to stay and basically defend their position, while Sergeant Rock and one of the other members follows the doctor. And so they end up getting in this motorcycle and a sidecar, and ends up being very much, to me at least, reminiscent of Last Crusade, because they're going through chasing Nazis in this motorcycle and sidecar, and Sergeant Rock and the guy that he's with noticed like how heavily armed this position is. And Sergeant Rock starts to put together, he goes, well, we have this basically fortress, we have all these armed men, we have Hitler's doctor, do you know what this means? This is where Hitler is. And that's where the book ends. So it keeps up with the pacing and the speed that the other books have had. A lot of this is, firefight and return, between Easy Company and the Nazis. And you see, on the sequence where they're being chased on the motorcycle. They go past what I thought were water tanks, right? And they start firing at them, and they drench the Nazis, the Nazi monsters, in what looks like water. And then Sergeant Rock takes his Zippo and throws it on him. Turns out it was a gas tank. And so we get a lot of fun action out of Russo in there, and because that's what they've established is the one way to fully take out these zombie monsters is fire. So it's always this right there. Any way that they can cause a fire to get rid of them, and then it keeps going that they got to find out how they're making these monsters and what's going on. And I think Bruce Campbell's doing a pretty good job because it's a very kind of bare bones book. Like it's very much a kind of like one of these B war movies that Hollywood would have churned out back in the 50s, 60s. There's very little character development because all these characters are kind of archetypes of Army. Even Sergeant Rock is just kind of gung-ho sergeant, we're going to keep moving. And when he says at the end, he goes, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that we've located Hitler. The bad news is I lost my Zippo. So it even gets into some of the cheesiness. And I'm almost wondering if like a younger Bruce Campbell could have played a Sergeant Rock. I think he's too old now. But I wonder if I go back and read this and insert his voice, if that would make the character almost come alive a little bit more. Because I would say that's the biggest problem with the book is all the characters are kind of hollow. They're just kind of these, again, archetypes. But watching Nazis get burned up and shot at and otherwise destroyed is always a good time in my book. Because to quote Indiana Jones, Nazis, I hate these guys. But yeah, just a basic book. I would tell people just wait for the trade to come out. We're 4 out of 6 at this point, and it'll probably read a lot better in trade. It'll feel like a nice, brisk story of not of soldiers versus zombies. So so I'll give this a 7 out of 10. Like it's not phenomenal, but it's a nice, light, fun read.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I had a Patreon book this week. American Vampire issue 28. As I explained at the start, I didn't realize I was doing the miniseries the last 5 weeks or 5 weeks, 5 episodes that I did American Vampire. So that was Lords of Nightmare 1 through 5. I just did with American Vampire. So this is issue 28, which is back to Pearl, who opens up the book. She's back in Hollywood, California. It's 1954. And she's got a vampire in the back of her car that she's dragged up there to ask some questions. And then ultimately, knowing he's not going to talk, he's up there because sunrise is happening, and he, of course, like bursts into vampire dust and blood and whatever. So fun sequence. Albuquerque on the art, of course. This comes after the cliffhanger, which before the last regular issue was that Henry had been attacked at their home, and this is why she's questioning a vampire. And Calvin, the other vampire who's kind of like a good guy, is at the hospital with Henry, and she goes to see him, and Henry's in a hospital bed, and it brings up the question, of course, where Calvin says, have you thought about turning him? Because like he's barely alive, and this might be the. And she starts crying and says, he made me promise that I wouldn't. He made me promise that I would never, even if he was in a position like this, to not turn him. And it's a really good scene. He kind of, she gets emotional. She's lying on his chest, and then some doctors and nurses come in and say they want to move him, but she catches them out in a lie, and very quickly they start attacking their vampires. Shout out to the main doctor vampire here because he's got this great big handlebar mustache, which feels really out of place in 1950s. I think the idea is that this is a vampire who's from a different time. He's been around from a different time period. So
is it like a Triple H handlebar, or is it even more?
No, it's the sort of the handlebar that's sort of like tufted up at the sides.
So like a walrus kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and he's got the big sideburns as well, because of course he does.
Gotcha.
So we get a big fight sequence in the hospital with Calvin and Pearl just like decimating these vampires, throwing them out a window. Takes up quite a few pages, this fight, Which, if I'm going to critique the issue, is that it doesn't advance that much because it spends a lot of time on this fight scene in the middle that feels like it's really just to establish that Henry's in danger and the vampire's going to keep coming for him. But the real meat of the issue is the back chunk, which is they go to the vassals for help. They've taken Henry into their secret lair under the observatory. The Griffith Observatory, specifically. So they're using a famous landmark here.
Yes.
And they've got him in a hospital bed underneath, and they're doing this in return for Pearl helping them. And obviously, Hobbs isn't here. This actually seems to be taking place around the same time as the miniseries, because they mention Hobbs is off in Europe or something. So this is actually taking place, and obviously Hobbs dies at the end of that story.
Right.
So he ain't showing back up. But we're dealing with Agent, so what's his name here? Bixby. Agent Bixby is the one who's collaborating with her now. And basically says, we've taken out most of the vampire dens in California, but there's at least one super secret one that's got members of the Hollywood elite hiding them. Kind of like Reds under the beds, undeads under the beds, as they put it. So
goddamn Snyder, you're real good there.
I know, it's very funny. The big reveal here though is Pearl's agreeing to do this, is that her partner that she's going to be doing this with, because she's like, wait, am I going to walk up to these mansions and knock on the door myself and investigate where these vampires might be hiding? And the big reveal is that she's going to have a partner, and would you believe it, it's Skinner Sweet in a suit and tie with a hat, but he's got the candy cane sticking out of his pocket, of course. And she's surprised that he's not dead. Because the last time we saw Skinner was in the big plot that was I think it was the World War II stuff, maybe. No, it wasn't true, because he was in the racing stuff with the greaser vampire.
Yeah. But that's the last time we've seen him. It's been a minute.
It has been a little while, yeah. And I don't actually think it's been that long, really, but it feels like a while because we did the miniseries. And then came back, because he wasn't in the two-parter that was in the main book before I read the miniseries, but that was only a couple of issues, so yeah, it probably wouldn't have felt that long had it not been for that. But it feels like a while. But he's got his hair all combed. I'm assuming as the arc goes on, we're going to learn how exactly he's sort of sticking with this and looking all presentable. He's probably got ulterior motives because he's Skinner Sweet, of course. So we get this great full page spread where they're both holding old school handguns, and she's like, let's kill them all. So she's working with them. So that's the big final page of the issue. So it's an enjoyable issue, and the action in it's obviously really well drawn. I do think the action in this case feels like it takes up a bit of time, because we already have the action at the start where she's got the vampire up at the Hollywood sign and she waits for the sunrise to kill him. That's already a fun action sequence. So there's the action sequence in the middle of the issue, which is at the hospital. It's there to establish that they're going to keep coming for Henry, so he's in danger, and that's why they have to go to the vassals. But it does take 6 pages of a 22-page book, and it just kind of feels like it eats up maybe too much of the time. But I mean, I can't say I'm not intrigued by Pearl teaming up with Skinner to take out the last of the vampires in Los Angeles. It's interesting. For sure, so I'm intrigued to see where it goes with it. But I think Lord of Nightmares, that miniseries, was so good, and it's some of my favorite stuff that American Vampire's been up until this point. But this did feel a little bit, just a little bit deflating comparatively, but still definitely some good stuff in here, and I'm excited to see what they do, because obviously I like Pearl and Henry as characters. So
I'm just glad Skinner's back. He's I really love that bastard.
Of course. But that's the book. Probably still a reasonable 7.5 out of 10, but definitely a little bit of a step down compared to that. It's interesting to think this was releasing alongside that miniseries when it was coming out, obviously. So
yeah.
But yeah, there you go. But that'll take us out of the part of the show. We pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and then of course we'll rank the top 5. Which in this case I read 5 books, so I'll be ranking all of them. Nice. Matt, what are you picking for panel / moment of the week?
So the Nice House on the Lake had a really good one. Detective had some nice stuff with Mr. Freeze, but I'm gonna go with Action Comics.
Of course,
it's gonna be the Angry Dad threat from Superman Deluxe. Just a really good moment, and it made me feel good as a Superman fan. That someone's like, "Yeah, I'm a nice guy, but don't push me." All right, man.
Naturally. I'm just gonna go with the last page of Nice House in the Lake. It just, I got such a grin in my face as it was like, yeah, this was only part one. Like, the pull did, this is just part one to be continued on as, and I was pleased and delighted because it made sense given that there was still felt like there was more to explore, but the whole time we kind of wanted it to be more than just 12 issues because it was so good. So it was just the perfect reveal of that. So yeah, so there you go. Cover, there was a nice Sorrentino cover for Nice House.
But yeah, that looked cool.
But I've got to say, the main action cover is my pick. It just looks really nice. Superman, nice blue sky, flying, wonderfully shaded.
Yes.
Really into it. There's a lot of variants for Action 1050, but I don't think any of them are as good as that. In fact, I clicked on one that I think is like ugly as shit. Like,
which one?
The 1/75 Alexander Lozano cover. I think that is horrible.
I'm looking for that one.
The proportions are really weird.
What's the main action piece on it?
It's Superman on the front, and he's kind of just sort of got his hands clasped together.
Oh yeah. I see that one. Not good.
Yeah, really weird proportions. It's kind of like, just really weird. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. What's your cover?
So mine's an action variant, but I'm gonna let you guess real quick which one would be my cover.
Oh God.
Yeah, and it's not because I almost went with the Mike Perkins because I do like that. There's a nice horror quality to that.
Is it Clark and Lois having the milkshake?
Nope, it's not that one.
Oh, is it Bibbo and
Bibbo and Beppo having an arm wrestling contest as Crypto looks directly at the camera.
Why am I not surprised? Yeah.
No, I saw that one. I was like, look, this is dangerous of being a self-parody. However, it is a great, and it's Steve Lieber, like, to a T. Like, this is what he's perfect at. But I also want to shout out the 1/50 Barrio Nuevo. There's just something about it that I like. I don't know if it's the Dutch angle, or if that it's a younger Clark. But it's just the watercolor on it looks real good too. But yeah, I'm going with the Steve Lieber. How do you beat that?
Yeah, okay. All right. Art of the week, Matt.
This one's kind of tough. So I did like the Sergeant Rock art. That's kind of the key on there, but it's Nice House on the Lake. It's hard to beat Martinez Bueno during this week. So.
Yeah, I'm picking Bueno as well. Definitely the best all-rounder and consistent art of the week, I would say. All right, top 5 books, Matt, go.
All right, number 1, Nice House on the Lake. Number 2, Action Comics. Number 3, Detective Comics. Number 4 is Blue Beetle. Number 5, Sergeant Rock.
Yeah, for me, number 1's Nice House. Number 2 is Detective. It would have been Action, but the art just dragged it down a bit. So number 3 is Action. Number 4 is Blue Beetle. Number 5 is DC versus Vampires. And that's just kind of there because it's the last one. That's it. So I'll tell you what's coming next week from DC Comics. We have Batman 131, Dark Knights of Steel issue 9, Poison Ivy issue 8, The Joker, The Man Who Stopped Laughing issue 4, Gotham City Year 1 issue 4, Sword of Azrael issue 6, and Batman Nightwatch issue 5. It's a very quiet week. I mean, even between me and Matt, we only have 4 books that we're going to talk about. So as we said earlier, the show will be late, meaning it'll probably be early for patrons maybe on the Sunday. I think I said it wouldn't be early. I think it might be now, actually. I'm thinking about it. It may be early for patrons late on the Sunday and then up for everyone on the Monday, as opposed to the usual Saturday-Sunday schedule. And then the annual episode, looking at the best of the year stuff, will be out sometime during the week. Also, look out. I'll probably put out a voting form before the next episode goes out for the viewer's choice, or the listener's choice for best of the year, like we do most years. So look out for that on the socials, at DC Comics Podcast on Twitter, on the Discord, of course. I'll put a link in it to there as well. And I'll also put it in the description of the next episode, of course. But yeah, so look out for that. But yeah, that's the show. I'm really hungry, so I'm just going to very quickly say thank you very much for listening, and thank you to everyone who supports us. Whether that's financially or not financially, you can of course do it financially over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV.
Financially, emotionally, and spiritually.
But have a happy new year. In fact, by the time you get this, it'll already be 2023.
Yeah.
So, happy 2023. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time. Keep reading comics, and remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.